The Assembly will hear an address by His Highness Sheikh Sabah Khaled Al-Hamad Al-Sabah, Prime Minister of the State of Kuwait. May I request protocol to escort His Excellency. I have great pleasure in welcoming His Highness Sheikh Sabah Khaled Al-Hamad Al-Sabah, Prime Minister of the State of Kuwait, and I invite him to address the General Assembly.
Shukran, Sayyid Rais.
Thank you, Mr. President. In the name of Allah, the Merciful, the Compassionate, Your Excellency, Mr. Abdullah Shahid, President of the United Nations General Assembly, Your Excellency, Mr. Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations, Your Majesties, Highnesses, Excellencies, Heads of Delegations, ladies and gentlemen, may the peace, mercy, and blessing of Allah be upon you. It gives me great pleasure at the outset to congratulate you and the Republic of the Maldives on your election as President of the 76th session of the United Nations General Assembly. I assure you of our full support in all tasks that would facilitate your work. I would also like to seize the opportunity to express our sincere gratitude for the tremendous effort of your predecessor, His Excellency Mr. Volkan Bozkir, during his presidency of the 75th session. I should also like to congratulate His Excellency Mr. Antonio Guterres on his re-election as Secretary General of the United Nations, which is a recognition of his remarkable effort in leading this august organization during his first term. The last year of which has witnessed a multifaceted, grave challenge that has claimed countless lives and caused much material and moral damage. Mr. President, our world is still in deep mourning due to COVID-19, a pandemic of global reach and excessive destructive ability. It claims human lives without distinction. It sends successive shock waves that upend the core of modern lifestyles in their various humanitarian, political, economic, and environmental aspects. A quick glance at the figures and statistics recorded worldwide shows the magnitude of the scars that will remain present for a long time on our collective conscience. It shows casualties that have surpassed 4.5 million people and confirmed recorded cases exceeding 231 million cases, as well as the crippling burden placed on health sectors and professionals who deserve our greatest appreciation for their dedication and work in the front lines, despite the horrors that threatened the collapse of many health systems across the world. This is in addition to the exacerbation of the food insecurity crisis due to the disruption in supply lines, which came as an expected outcome of the severe economic downturn and stagnation, unheard of in over 90 years. Further, we saw a decline in the services of the education sector, in particular in developing and least developed countries, in such a way that threatens more than ever to reverse the gains made and waste achievements of the Sustainable Development Goals. Mr. President, any study of history will show that epidemics, despite the gravity of their effects, have played pivotal roles as major catalysts for change and for building back better at the political, economic, and social levels. From this standpoint, the COVID-19 pandemic was like a mirror that reflected the world's weaknesses and revealed its chronic flaws, among which are the increase in hunger and poverty rates, prolonged conflicts, unchecked advances in modern technology with ramifications on cybersecurity and the spread of the scourge of terrorism, as well as the mounting structural disparities and gaps among countries. All these challenges have put multilateralism to an existential test of survival or decline and stagnation. Perhaps one of the most positive changes brought about by the pandemic was the emergence of modern patterns of creativity, innovation, adaptation that have contributed to creating rapid responses and advanced forms of cooperation within societies and between countries. This is in addition to the breakthrough in scientific research that was manifested in the race to defeat the virus through the production of multiple vaccines that have proved their effectiveness in providing the required immunization empirically with encouraging figures. Yet, much hinges upon the ability of the international community to make optimal use of this crisis towards a better transformation for our world in a serious endeavor for a sustainable and equitable recovery where no one is left behind. Mr. President, recovery requires starting with several steps, most important among which is giving utmost priority to investing in data and information infrastructure, as the availability of digital evidence will contribute to enhancing decision-making processes in the programs and policies aimed at mobilizing resources and post-crisis rebuilding in order to shield societies from similar future crises. However, the most important and urgent step is finding fair and secure distribution patterns of vaccines to all countries towards achieving universal immunization. In this regard, the state of Kuwait has achieved one of the highest global vaccination rates of 72% for our nationals and expatriates alike. We are also able to protect our health system from collapsing. My country continues to support international efforts to fight the COVID-19 pandemic with total contributions of $327.4 million, the latest of which was providing $40 million to the Gavi Alliance and the COVAX Facility Initiative towards enhancing global health security. Mr. President, the question of Palestine remains central to our Arab and Muslim worlds. Tension and instability will continue in our region if the Palestinian people do not obtain all their legitimate political rights, and if Israel, the occupying power, continues its practices and violations of international humanitarian law. These violations include the building of settlements, confiscation of land, closure of territories, the continued blockade on Gaza, and the desecration of the sanctity of holy places. We stress the importance of continuing to exert efforts to restart the negotiations within a set time frame towards a just and comprehensive peace, according to the terms of reference of the peace process, the resolutions of international legitimacy, and the Arab Peace Initiative, with a view to ending the Israeli occupation and the establishment of an independent Palestinian state with East Jerusalem as its capital along the borders prior to the 4th of June 1967, and the return of the refugees. At the same time, we commend the indispensable role of UNRWA in providing basic assistance to millions of Palestinian refugees and stress the importance of continuing to support its work. Mr. President, the ongoing Syrian crisis, which has entered its 11th year, with all the humanitarian suffering for Syrians inside and outside the country, has proved that the absence of international consensus and will, as well as external intervention, have all prolonged this brutal conflict. Here we reiterate our principled conviction that there is no military solution to the crisis. We emphasize the importance of reaching a political settlement in accordance with relevant Security Council resolutions, especially Resolution 2254, in a way that meets the aspirations and hopes of the brotherly Syrian people. Mr. President, the continuing crisis in brotherly Yemen and the growing and dangerous threats it poses to regional peace and stability are testament to how relevant Security Council resolutions and outcomes are addressed in practice. Hence, we stress our firm position that the only solution to this crisis is a political one, based on the three agreed-upon terms of reference, namely the GCC initiative and its implementation mechanism, the outputs of the National Dialogue Conference, and the resolutions of the Security Council, especially Resolution 2216. We also renew our support to the Special Envoy of the Secretary General to Yemen. At the same time, we welcome the constructive role of the sisterly Kingdom of Saudi Arabia towards the implementation of the Riyadh Agreement, as well as its initiative for peace in Yemen. We express our condemnation of all aggressions and attacks against Saudi territory and reaffirm our support to all measures taken by the Kingdom to maintain its security and stability. Mr. President, the Libyan Political Dialogue Forum election earlier this year of a head and deputies for its Presidency Council, as well as of a Prime Minister, is an encouraging sign that the international community, through the UN, is able to make headway towards a difficult peace that was elusive due to 7 years of severe institutional divisions with serious repercussions on the security and stability of Libya and countries in the region. We call upon our Libyan brothers to give priority to the best interest of the country, as well as peaceful solutions that reject violence. They must commit to the outcomes of international conferences and relevant Security Council resolutions to ensure concluding all necessary arrangements for holding the general elections on time on the 24th of December 2021. We expect that these efforts and arrangements would ensure the security, stability, and unity of Libya and meet the aspirations of the brotherly people of Libya. Mr. President, the pandemic has had political, social, and economic repercussions that diverted the attention of the world, which was exploited by extremist and terrorist groups in conflict-affected or fragile and insecure areas. The Middle East, in particular, has suffered from the destruction and sabotage of terrorist organizations, mainly the ISIL terrorist organization. This led to an intensification of the war on this clear and present danger in all its forms and manifestations, as we work to dry up its funding and implement international and regional counterterrorism conventions. Many countries in our region are suffering from this growing threat in Yemen, Libya, Syria, Somalia, and Iraq. The international community has followed with much interest the critical recent developments in Afghanistan. We call upon the Taliban and all parties to exercise utmost restraint to protect lives and also to provide full protection for civilians. We also call upon them to strictly adhere to obligations and international law, to maintain stability and security in the country, and to uphold the rights and gains of the friendly people of Afghanistan. At the regional level, based on our principled position rooted in the rules of good neighborliness set forth in the Charter of the United Nations, we reiterate our call to the Islamic Republic of Iran to take serious steps towards confidence building in a dialogue based on respect for the sovereignty of states and non-interference in their domestic affairs, towards diffusing tension in the Gulf and maintaining the safety, security, and freedom of maritime navigation from any threats. This would contribute towards establishing relations based on mutual respect and cooperation, which paves the way for the realization of the aspirations of the peoples of the region towards security, stability, prosperity, and development. I turn to a thorny regional question. The erosion of the nuclear disarmament regime is an existential threat to the security and stability of the region. We look forward to the concerted international and regional efforts towards the successful holding of the second session of the Conference on Establishing a Nuclear Weapons and WMDs Free Zone in the Middle East, which the State of Kuwait will preside over, to be held in New York in November 2021. Mr. President, the current COVID-19 pandemic continues to deprive countries of the gains made towards the SDGs. It has shown that different aspects of sustainability are interlinked. Hence, the issue of climate change and ecosystems was also subject to its waves. In this regard, we expect the UN Climate Change Conference to be held in Glasgow next month to reach a constructive review to track progress made and identify shortcomings based on the principle of common but differentiated responsibility towards ending environmental degradation exacerbated by marked increases in temperatures, severe storms, and floods, as well as deforestation due to fires in a number of countries, which would have severe environmental repercussions. In conclusion, I reiterate our adherence to the international multilateral system and to the principles and purposes of the United Nations Charter to ensure the development and strengthening of international governance, to guarantee the realization of the noble mission of the UN towards the maintenance of international peace and security, and to serve all of mankind. May the peace and blessings of Allah be upon you.
On behalf of the General Assembly, I wish to thank the Prime Minister of the State of Kuwait for the statement just made, and I request protocol to escort His Excellency.